All right, we are back with the group, and we've spent a lot of time talking about all the wonderful reasons to be a Vincentian and what we love about the work. We've talked about how it changes your life. We've talked about building relationships with amazing people, but we would be remiss if we did not talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we face in this ministry, and certainly there are challenges. And I think it's fair to kind of broadly separate those challenges into two categories. There are the challenges that we face in doing the work, and that's everything from fatigue to frustration to all the usual human emotions that people experience. And then there are also some challenges working with the kinds of people that we work with. And so I want us to talk a little bit about both of those. And so I'll throw to the group, what are some of the more common challenges a Vincentian might experience meeting with people? What comes to mind when I say that? What are some of the things that are pretty normal challenges you'll encounter going door to door? Oh, Catherine.
You can't get into a building.
You can't get into a
cold.
building.
You can't get into a housing building.
I would say a frustrating thing is when you've made an appointment and they're not home.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Is it a one-off? Is it chronic? That can be a real challenge.
Yeah, that's a good one, and and I have to admit, at the beginning, I used to get pretty annoyed, and then that whole thing about patience being a virtue started to, flash in neon lights in my head, and what I've since done is I just bypass that individual and go to the other visits for the evening, and then just gradually try to re-engage somehow, either through calling on the cell phone, or actually getting into the building and knocking on the door and leaving a note if we can't get there. But at least I can go to bed at night knowing I've tried my best to connect. One of the things, Brandon, that I have as a challenge from time to time is a little bit of the opposite, actually. That the neighbor is there, but they don't necessarily want to welcome you in, right? Yeah. They just want the donation. They just want the alms, as the case may be. And you, as a Vincentian, know that the crux of being a Vincentian is in having that home visit. So at times that could be a little bit frustrating, because you've said your prayer, you've cleansed your biases for the day, you're ready to be an active listener, and then the neighbor in need isn't ready to be an active engager. So this is where you have to step back and say, it's not about you, it's about them. And they may have had a very difficult day. Maybe creditors were calling them, maybe the kids were giving them grief, any sort of situation that creates such a stressful situation for them that they can't even clear their own mind of their own personal situation. And basically they're just telling you in their own way that they are not ready to engage you. And 9 times out of 10, the situation changes in future visits.
Agreed.
But that's one of the challenges that we as Vincentians encounter from time to time.
So the other thing that I've run into from time to time, and Brendan, I know you'll know this, is when they actually want you to come in and they don't ever want to let you go.
Oh, there's that too.
You're here, and I'd like you to stay for a couple of hours. But I can't stay for a couple of hours. I actually have to see some other people too, and so that's and it's because they're so lonely, or they're so they're really, you're the highlight of their month in some cases. So it can be a bit of a challenge that way. So and you'll run into that from time to time, I think, and that's a difficult one. Like, how do you extricate yourself? You're not supposed to be looking at your watch. You're supposed to be sort of how do you somehow find it, and listen and be involved and stay focused and somehow manage to to break off the conversation so you can actually escape and go see another person in the building who also needs help that day. So that's sometimes what I run into too. So I'm sure you all know this.
As a Vincentian, being judgmental and trying to block your personal biases, because we all have it.
Oh yeah.
And so that is something that I find, and the only way to get rid of that really is to do more visits. it's
Yeah, that's a great point.
it's a fun thing. That's the only way to. It's the only way to get beyond it is do more visits and pray and everything. But you have to expose yourself more into the situation. And I find within where we do visits, there's a lot of basement apartments, and so the other challenge is that you go in and you want to literally dial the authorities on the spot, but you can't. And so because if you report them, someone moves out in the morning and someone moves in the afternoon. So that's a challenge. So
Yeah, that's true.
so that's another challenge that you just have to go and accept. There are other ways of doing it without having someone being thrown out, like lobbying to the city and so on and so forth. But that's just a physical challenge that you walk into, and you're going to be into that for the next 15, 20, sometime.
I want to ask the group this because I think for some people who are considering becoming Vincentians, they think about this and it can be a little bit of an elephant in the room sometime, especially I think the assumptions that some people might make about the people that we work with. Have you ever encountered safety issues in the course of your work? And how do we as a society and in your individual conferences, how do you proactively address potential safety issues?
Brendan, I think it's a good question, but I think there's some things you can do that is very basic. For example, if it's a male neighbor in need, you need to ensure that you have a male and a female. If it's a female, you don't have two males, you have a male and female. You must have two persons. But I think one of the key things I think we have to our advantage that we need to use more of is we need to talk among ourselves in meetings, because I may go out with a partner and I may have an interpretation of a visit and another pair may have a different interpretation. They may be able to pick up something that you will never, like, for example, I like to talk. So I'm always going to be talking, right? I'm not going to be the one that is soaking in, but someone else has that ability and they will catch things that I will not. So I find that in your conference, a 5-10 minutes talk will help to share different persons' views, and that helps you when you go out. And I think that is something I think we need to use to our benefit.
I find the conference is a really great source of intel, right? Where everyone will share information about the people that they're meeting, the things that they're learning, the buildings that we're entering into. And I at least actually get a lot of reassurance from that intel, knowing that there's a group of 20 people that are visiting these places every day, and we're constantly learning and updating our knowledge about the people that we're meeting and the circumstances that we work in. So there's strength in numbers. That's probably the best way to put it. And there's certainly strength in, to the point you're making, Omar, the insights that you glean from other people's experiences. Like, for example, Jay knows this, Catherine knows this. We have an incredible Vincentian named Barbara at our conference who could write a 300-page memoir about every single neighbor in need that we work with. Like clockwork, there's Barbara in the back of the conference room table, and she will pipe up and say, X person went through this and that, and this is a, and so it's always have those people in conferences that are just really plugged into what's happening with the people that we work with.
Safety is paramount. And if you don't feel safe, you don't go. You know, it's not the best answer, but from the neighbor needs perspective, but you have to look after yourself, then you won't be able to look after anyone else.
I think we also need to know our limitations. We are not experts.
Right on.
We are not experts. We should know our limitations, and it's okay to refer.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy. And I think we just need to understand that. And anything that we think we know in dealing with a neighbor in need who has challenges mentally, their family or friends know much more than we do. And sometimes we should take cues there.